Welcome to the Digital Healthcare Experience, brought to you by Taylor Healthcare. Subscribe now and stay on the forefront of the digital healthcare revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Digital Healthcare Experience podcast presented by Taylor Healthcare. I'm your host, Chris Civitarese, and today I'm joined by Brad Busick, Senior VP and Chief Information Officer at MultiCare Health System. Brad is an industry-recognized IT leader in the design and delivery of cost-effective, high-performance technology solutions. He's been a TED speaker, was featured in CIO Magazine, and is one of Constellation Research's top 150 innovative CXOs in the country. Recently, he's been nominated for the National Healthcare CIO of the Year Award. Welcome to the podcast, Brad. It's a real pleasure to have you on today.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So today we're going to be talking, I'll say sort of generally the role of the IT department in driving healthcare innovation, which is obviously a huge topic given all the rapid change that we're seeing in the industry. So where I like to start is always just, giving our guests an opportunity to tell us a little bit about your background and your role at MultiCare. So if you'd like to kick us off with that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Well, it's great to be with you. My role into healthcare was actually really non-traditional. I have been local to this area in Tacoma for about 25 years and spent time in management consulting and then ironically on the payer side of the house. And then spent a little bit of time in philanthropy at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And then ended up at MultiCare with the opportunity to help us optimize care delivery and start to explore and provide really elegant solutions to both our patients and IT customers, whether that's systems that they engage with on a daily basis, ranging from the corporate intranet to the extranet, but also how do we provide care in a seamless way through Epic and the major core platforms that we use. And so, as you said in your kickoff, it is a whirlwind right now of opportunity. Particularly when in a time where healthcare just hasn't invested in IT, where IT is a place that you go get your computer fixed, as opposed to a thought partner. And I just don't adhere to that. And so as such, we've transformed to be a thought partner and in a lot of cases a thought leader at MultiCare over the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I have to imagine that as we sort of evolve, we're seeing changes in expectations, both from a patient perspective and also, as you say, sort of from your internal customer perspective, providers, et cetera. Curious, what are those changes that you're starting to see and how are you guys reacting to those?
Yeah, the changes that we're seeing are mostly positive. I would say initially, you have to earn the right to be heard. And what I mean by that is it very much turns into a show me, don't tell me model. You can go publish, a fancy newsletter that says, hey, we're doing X, Y, and Z. But until they actually start to see results, till they start to see higher uptime, till they start to see, telehealth solutions that just work, right? We don't have to, spend 3 months sending somebody to school to learn how to start a virtual visit. There's just blocking and tackling that I think most organizations take for granted. And they want to go after the big shiny things. We 100% do both. We actually believe in the big shiny things, particularly if they advance our mission. But we also don't forget about the basics. And some of those basics are just relationships and really truly understanding the goals and objectives of each of the groups. And so spending time having a process to understand those strategies so that we can provide technology where appropriate, and in other cases, provide process where appropriate. And we've done both.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm curious. I mean, so when I think about all the different constituents and stakeholders and so on and so forth that you have to deal with, from an IT perspective, how do you create that alignment? Because as you say, sometimes IT is the one sort of driving the change, and sometimes it's almost a role of service to others that are trying to drive change sort of through their purview. So how does that come together, and how do you ensure that you've got alignment around those goals?
Yeah, it's a really awesome question, and I think it's a really elegant dance. In a lot of cases, we don't believe in IT projects, Chris. The goal and a capability is driven by our operational owners. So if you tell me the what, I'm going to go figure out the how. And I think that's the line of delineation. And I think where I start to see friction develop, whether it's at MultiCare or other places, is when the how and the what start to get crossed. Now, what's interesting in this is that in some cases, IT actually might understand both the what and the how. And so in partnership, particularly when there's just no ego involved, if someone says, look, I'll give you a real life example that happened this morning. I was on a call at 7 o'clock with one of my partners in home health and hospice, and they were trying to figure out how to, when they're out mobile, access Epic in a more elegant way. Sometimes that just comes down to, hey, have we thought about using your phone as a hotspot or providing battery chargers in our mobile vehicles so that your iPads don't die so that you can continue to provide care? There's nothing wild about that solution other than where else would they have gone in the past? They would have just let the iPad die and be, frustrated about it. And as a result, our patients suffer. We've changed that equation. If we can get up front and now we just know that's just standard delivery, or let's issue you a hotspot that's in your car that's on at all times that you can access from the patient's house or apartment, tied back to your car, and you can issue prescriptions and orders all from your mobile device. Sounds pretty simple, and yet there's lots of those what I'll call pebbles in shoes that exist around a system of our size, and so we are not short on opportunities to improve at MultiCare, and arming our staff to go do just that has been some of the work that we've been pursuing.
I love that example. That's I always say you don't necessarily need to invent to innovate.
No,
I think that's a wonderful example of something that it's technology that's been around us for forever. I mean, as long as we can all probably remember.
Right. That's right.
It's an enablement conversation. It kind of sounds like
an enablement. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think once we have those solutions, word travels fast, right? And so we would take something as simple like this and highlight our partners in home health and hospice in our monthly publication we put out to all of our partners across the system, and in some cases to our external customers, because most likely they're struggling with the same situation. MultiCare doesn't just host MultiCare's Epic. We host it for lots and lots and lots of other organizations as well. And so anything that we can share, we want to do that at scale because it benefits everybody.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, anytime that we can take best practices and move them, throughout the industry, throughout a region. I always, healthcare is whatever, 20 some odd % of GDP, but it still feels like kind of a cottage industry in a lot of ways, where we're all working towards these same goals. And,
Agreed.
These little things could sort of have that flywheel effect to them. It really, really feels that way. So it's really interesting.
100%. And I would say that part of our learning over the last 5 years is how are we thoughtful about capturing those wins and then celebrating them, right? I think in a time where we spend so much time focusing on negatives and where people are just having energy, sucked out of them and they're burning out, we've forgotten to highlight those wins, no matter how small. Because the truth is that win for her program that we just talked about is of equitable in size and impact as me rolling out an EMR for another one of our practices. Yeah. It changes the way that they deliver care. And so every one of these is a win. And we have a very systemic process around how we celebrate those wins and highlight our customers.
It's really interesting. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But you also said something that I want to touch on in a little bit more detail. You sort of, you alluded to the fact that there might be, some competing, I'll say, ideas and ways of doing things, ways of improving, IT operations, clinicians. We have all of these, sort of constituents in the fold. I'm wondering, specific strategies that you guys employ to bridge those gaps, to foster that collaborative environment, and to, bring that feedback in from leadership, from frontline staff, from all the different places that sort of it arises from. I'm curious about, again, specifically how you guys handle that and what you do there.
Yeah, absolutely. So in IT, we adhere to a methodology that we actually rolled out at the Gates Foundation, and it's an A3 methodology that allows us to be really, really crisp around the capabilities we're deploying. I don't care about the product, right? So if the capability is like, well, look, we need an ERP, that could be a lot of things. That could be SAP, that could be Oracle, that could be Workday. And so if we know that we need to go and, for example, decrease the amount of time it takes to onboard non-clinical staff. Okay, I know that HR has that goal. I can partner with my friend in HR and ask what support she needs from the technology to go do that. In some cases for us, Chris, that could be removing steps out of the process. That could be combining two screens into one. That could be engaging with an SMS capability that gets us responses from candidates faster. We track that on the A3, and every 90 days, we're going through as a team and looking at how are you performing? What are you learning? What's your study and what's your adjust? Meaning the study that you had spent time on the previous 90 days clearly forced an adjustment. How is that adjustment now tying back to the objective of the reduction in time that you said was important to you, at least at that point in time? Having that level of rigor around everything that we do has been really, really valuable to us. I think the second thing that's been invaluable to us is embedding IT staff at the sharp end. So part of our strategy, whether it's our customer service managers, our business relationship managers, or even our clinical informatics staff, they're embedded at the hospitals. They support certain customers. They hear about issues before we do. And of course, you hear it once, it's a problem. If you hear it twice, it's a theme. And we can apply that across our entire portfolio. And so having that at the sharp end feedback is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so you kind of walk a mile in their shoes. And I imagine, does that work kind of both ways? So obviously, the IT staff gets, I'll say, sort of like direct exposure to what's happening at the hospital level. Is that bi-directional where now sort of the clinical or the administrative staff or what have you is also sort of seeing it a little bit more through the lens of, what IT would be concerned with through that process too? Is that bi-directional?
Yeah, very, very much. Yeah, very much. I mean, we're intentionally blurring the lines between technology and operations.
Right.
So, for example, I have my chief medical information officer is a urologist. We've got a CI team, of course, that's all nurses, and we've got a handful of CMIOs that are helping drive our data and AI strategy. All the way to clinician builders, right? And folks that are engaged in our Epic system and building it the way that a clinician would want to build it, as opposed to what IT thinks should be built. And I do think it's that partnership. The other piece that I think we've learned, though, is I'm not going to assume that our customers know everything about IT. That's not their job. Their job is to go provide care, right? So we will proactively put out forums and venues to facilitate that dialogue. So just yesterday, we did our third installment of a series called Make Me Care About. And it's provocative. This topic happened to be around security. So it was Make Me Care About security. And in these events, we get 500, 700 people that pile on to a meeting. It's 45 minutes. It's not a formal dissertation. We had Bon Jovi playing at the beginning of the meeting, and it's almost a fireside chat kind of banter around how are bad guys getting in?
Yeah.
What can we do to prevent ourselves? Why do you need to change your password from 12345 to something that's actually secure? Why you shouldn't use the same password for work that you use for your Gmail, Hotmail, AOL account, right? It's that dialogue that I think earns trust with IT, but we're also keeping our system safe. And so we will take it to them, or at least give them the channel and the forum to come and engage with us, and everybody wins as a result.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And as a lifelong New Jerseyan, I can 100% endorse the usage of, Bon Jovi wherever entirely possible.
100%. Absolutely. You can't go wrong.
I'm curious about, so you mentioned your background obviously extends, kind of well beyond healthcare. You spent time in consulting, you spent time in nonprofits. What did you glean or what did you learn from sort of those previous roles that's been kind of most applicable to your role here today in healthcare?
That's a really tough question because I think I'm still
learning. Right?
I'm still learning. This place, healthcare is wildly complex. The consistency between industries, whether you're aerospace or DoD or manufacturing, mechanical engineering, all the way to where I am today, the one constant has just been the importance of relationships and people. And I think the second you lose trust with someone, you just don't get it back. And so every interaction counts. And this is why I'm so picky about the folks that are on my leadership team. I've been around long enough at this point to delineate between someone who talks a good game and someone who can execute a good game. And the execution never lies. And so you get, I think, a certain amount of grace when you have relational capital and you've taken the time to hear and to learn and to spend time in people's shoes that you serve. And so I go and do that with our hospital presidents and our COOs. And they're not just my customers, they're my personal friends. I care about them. And I think people are smart enough at this point to understand when that's authentic and when that's noise. And the ones that are noisy, you just get cut out pretty quickly. And so I will invest time, authentic time, to know my team and to know the customers that I'm serving.
Yeah, I think that's, such an important part of, to your point. Just everything. I had a manager who once said that anybody who is who's important to your success and to the success of each other, like if you don't know where they're going on summer vacation, then you don't have a strong enough relationship.
You don't have a strong relationship. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting delineation between caring about someone and caring for someone.
That's right.
Those are two completely different things. And I think caring about someone, people can feel the difference. People know when they're being cared for. And I think there's something powerful about being known, even though that nobody in, corporate America wants to talk about that today. One of my favorite books of last year was called Love is a Business Strategy. And it catches a lot of heat because it introduces the L word into a place where, we shouldn't talk about love. And at the same time, I actually think that's the difference between good and great. And this is something that we try to mirror, we try to foster. It doesn't mean that I don't hold people accountable. I absolutely do. But that doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice kindness for excellence. And we don't. We do both.
I think that's very, very well said there. And I said that I wanted to come back to kind of along those lines in terms of, celebrating successes and, putting people at the forefront. One of the things that I know certainly we struggle with at Taylor, I'm sure a lot of other, companies and health systems and sort of across the board, to your point, I don't think this is specific to healthcare. But I'm curious about, when you start breaking down projects and, what you're measuring, how you're measuring them. I think a lot of times people look at, analytics through a very sort of like emotionless lens.
Yeah.
And they fail to make that connection to what does it mean to people, to patients, to staff, so on and so forth. Talk to me a little bit about that in more detail about how you approach that and what your goals and objectives are there.
Yeah, you bet. I think metrics are interesting. And if you kind of adhere to that idea of what gets, measured gets managed, yeah. I think that's true. But I also think it's important to measure the health of an organization, right? The health of a team. So right now in my division, we can measure our burnout. We measure our turnover rate. We measure our satisfaction. We also are proactively engaging our staff to say, like, look, this is what we want to talk about with regards to succession planning. This is how we are thinking about your particular career. Literally right before this call, I was having a conversation with someone that wants to make a leader who wants someone on our team to make a jump to another team because it's better for his growth.
Wow.
And, regardless of whether I agree or not with the particular move for this individual, the fact that that leader is advocating for this person to leave their own team because it's what's right for their own teammates' growth. And that to me is just something to celebrate. It's rare. I don't know that that it's rare until you leave and you go to a place where that's an anomaly. But that's certainly something that we celebrate. I would also say having a rhythm around the way that we do our work. I'm incredibly fortunate at MultiCare to have a COO on my team who forces, with an F, a rhythm and an order and a discipline for the way that we do our work. That's monthly, meetings with our team to go over our financials. That's weekly position control. That's a weekly portfolio review. And the reason we do that, even though, I know that it's not wildly popular, because I don't like surprises.
Right.
And I will tell you that there's some shops that will get to the end of the year and go, holy crap, we're $3 million over budget or 10 people over FTE headcount. How did that happen? We don't have those problems because we've instituted that discipline to eliminate surprises. And so we have our team retreat here, our quarterly PDSA, in about 2 weeks. And one, it's just great to be together in person. But two, we always run out of time because our agendas are just loaded, and you're mentally exhausted when you leave, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. I think it's a great investment too, to bring people on site and bring people together. Obviously, going back to that relationship building sort of thread we were on earlier, a lot harder to do that without, the in-person, sort of mechanisms that we had, maybe 5 years ago that are just a little bit harder to get to today.
Yeah, it feels like we've made this trade-off, and it's funny to watch a lot of my colleagues in the industry, whether they're at Amazon or at a place at the other end of the spectrum where you're just completely virtual. I don't know that there's a right or a wrong. I think it's what works for you.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that nothing replaces face-to-face interaction.
Yeah.
I was just at a customer site yesterday. We spent 8 hours with them in a boardroom, and we got to hear about their kids' track meets and what their struggles are financially, and how do we help optimize the way that they're working. And that's hard to get over Teams or Zoom, and so back to the importance of that relational foundation. I think that trust is built through time in.
Yeah.
And I think it's shared experience, and that's just something that we invest in heavily here.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. I want to transition a little bit to talking about some of the actual projects that you're working on now.
Sure.
So talk to me about, because I know that MultiCare is in to your point, a lot of sort of, as you described earlier, with the simplicity of sort of mobile hotspots or external batteries, things like that. But you're also doing some really cool things in terms of looking at autonomous robots, drone delivery. I mean, things that are kind of leading or bleeding edge. So talk to me a little bit about some of the projects that you're excited about that you're working on there.
It's really, really interesting to think about the state of the portfolio. And I talk about the portfolio inclusive of the rocks, and then in some cases the boulders.
Right.
One of the weird things that I'm also learning as I'm in school right now to go back to get another master's, and when you're surrounded with just different thinkers, you realize that your kind of state of normal is very different than other people's state of normal, right? It's kind of like, it goes back to Plato's allegory, right, where folks are locked in a cave and they have a fire behind them, and all they ever see is what's on the wall and the shadows, and that's their normal. Yep. I think that it parlays into the world of healthcare. If you're locked in a healthcare cave and all you've ever seen for 15, 20 years are the shadows on the wall, and you're not looking out in industry to say like, well, hey, could that retail solution apply to you and I today? Or could the experience that you had at Alaska Airlines when you used voice recognition to book your flight apply to the way that I go refill my prescriptions? It kind of goes back to the Russell Wilson adage when he was a Seahawk, why not us?
Right.
And I 100% agree with that statement. So why not us? So we very much are going after some things that are what I'll say non-traditional healthcare. The first of which we rolled out about a year and a half ago, and it is an autonomous robot solution called Moxie. And the way that this came to be, I was in Las Vegas. I was in a meeting, and I got a phone call from my president. And the president said, hey, my granddaughter was just delivered, and a robot just came in and brought a blanket to her. I need one of these at my hospital. And so I immediately was like, whoa, what is, tell me more. What is this?
Right.
And so she sent me a picture of it. 6 months later, we had Moxie at our hospital. Now that sounds interesting. What makes it actionable is the data that's coming behind it and the use case that it solves. And the use case that it solved for us was, we rolled this out at a time where our nurses were just drowning. And they were drowning because they are overworked. We have a nursing shortage. And frankly, they were working on non-value added tasks.
Right.
So in a time where IT could partner and say, hey, how do we bring you some relief? We rolled this solution out and started to pilot across one particular hospital. And the results were off the charts. They were off the charts by way of adoption. They were off the charts by way of the way the nurses reacted to not having to go walk across the hospital to the pharmacy every time that one of their patients needed help. And it was off the charts in terms of patient satisfaction.
Wow.
And so those are some things that we didn't fully understand. A year later, we were able to go roll up back to your previous question on metrics. Where did we land? We saved 21,000 hours of staff time.
Wow. Incredible.
21,000 hours of staff time, 6,400 miles traveled, right? So this robot traveled 6,000 miles, and it saved, our providers about 13.1 million steps.
Wow.
Now, that's all interesting. Aside from that, it actually made 31,000 deliveries that a human would have had to make. So if you extrapolate that to say like, all right, well, that's interesting. What makes it actionable? What makes it actionable is that a human would have had to do those 31,000 deliveries.
Yeah.
And in a time where we need to go and support our nurses, that was a really, really powerful, use case. Now, times change, right? And we have to adapt. So can the robots now do different things? Can they move teleboxes from one place to another? Can it go get my Grubhub so I can spend more time with a patient at the bedside? These are all the use cases we're continuing to explore. So that was one that was very real to us, and it's live and rolled out across quite a few of our facilities today. The one that's not live, but is coming to a hospital near you here in about 4 months, is our partnership around drone delivery for prescription medications at home, as well as medical equipment. And then the internal use case for us, Chris, that we're really excited about is labs and anything that needs to get developed and delivered from one hospital to the lab and back. And so this has not been done before. It doesn't exist. And in some cases, it's really easy for a system to go adopt a playbook when someone else is doing it.
Right.
It's a whole nother thing to go and develop, the device called the Nest that attaches to your hospital that this thing takes off from and lands in. And these are the things that honestly are, I think, going to be game changers for what I'm going to call the retail experience for our customers and patients who will interact with MultiCare in a really different way for the first time.
It's really interesting. And I mean, that's another one, right, that takes sort of those non-critical tasks off the plate of a good variety, it sounds like, of healthcare professionals in the network. So it's also just super cool. I mean, man, that's to your point, to be able to take this technology that's sort of out there, but blaze a trail for it in healthcare and in a big health system like MultiCare. It's really exciting. Yeah. I hope you'll come back and talk to us about how that pans out too, because I'm very interested.
Well, if it doesn't pan out and I get fired, you'll know that it didn't go well. But no, in all seriousness, I think more than anything, we're going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
And I think we'll be able to change the way that patients interface with healthcare, which to me is really, really exciting. Yeah. Zooming out from a non-healthcare lens, I think drone delivery is going to be a commodity.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to go, you and I are going to be able to look out our window and watch Domino's Pizza, CVS, Panera Bread, Amazon, everyone will be delivering via drone. And I made that call 4 years ago and people looked at me like I had, 4 eyes, and not on accident. Here we are.
Yeah, so. I think you're right. The Jetsons, I don't know, maybe we're here to stay.
It's coming.
For sure it's coming.
It's coming. Yeah, agreed.
So looking ahead, what do you see as sort of the upcoming trends in digital health that are going to, shape the next couple of years? And obviously, MultiCare, as you've described, is sort of on the leading edge of some of this stuff. So talk to me about what some of these trends are, and then talk to me a little bit about how you see yourself and MultiCare sort of staying ahead of and sort of up to date with the trends.
Yeah, you bet. Trends are really interesting to me because you can be on the front end of setting the trend, or you can be the one reacting to the trend. I'd say strategically, as we continue to grow, MultiCare is on an aggressive growth trajectory. And so we need to be really smart about the way that we do M&A. And in some cases, the technology and platform that we put in place need to be able to scale and adapt quickly to that entire portfolio. And that's some of the work we've been doing. It's really hard to do M&A when your technology doesn't scale.
Right.
And that's in CIO land, what we would call an employment opportunity. So we're going to continue to invest in that because I know that we're going to continue to grow. I'm fascinated right now with healthcare, and I would just say the general industry's obsession with AI. I actually don't even think we're going to be talking about AI as a capability. I think we're just going to be talking about products because everything will have AI built in. Right. It's analogous to how you and I were talking about big data, quote unquote, about 5 or 6 years ago. Now we just call it performance analytics or business intelligence because everything has it built in. And so, in talking with folks who on intake right now are flagging projects like, does it have AI? Everything's going to have it. I mean, legitimately, like you won't be able to compete without it.
Right.
And so I think that's going to become more of a mainstay. So we will be able to do more with less or the same. And it might manifest in terms of patient care by being able to walk into a room and have a conversation with your provider without them having their back turned to you, taking notes, right? So using ambient listening. And we're 5 months in on that pilot right now and having some pretty awesome results in terms of the patient experience who described a more intimate conversation with their provider to the doctor who just said, wow, I can't believe it picked up my accent, or I can't believe it coded it correctly with that high level of accuracy. I think we are at a foundational stage of those types of capabilities that will change subtly patient care. And I think that's on the conservative end. On the very, very far end of it, MultiCare is investing heavily in robotic surgeries, non-invasive surgeries that used to keep you in the hospital for 2 days, and now you're going home in 3 hours. And really, really fortunate to partner with folks like Dr. Layla Rashidi on our team, who is one of the world-leading thought leaders in partnership with Intuitive and thinking about how we do robotic surgeries differently for our patients here. It's actually been successful enough that we've got patients that are now coming to MultiCare because we offer this.
Wow.
Because if you had a choice to say, spend 3 days in the hospital or go home by lunch,
What is it?
you're probably going to go home by lunch.
That's right.
Right. And so we're going to invest in those capabilities as well.
Really interesting. I guess any final thoughts, anything that you want to end with here in closing, anything you're working on or excited about that you want to share with the community, anything at all to close out here?
Yeah. I think as I look at the next, 3 years, and I will say I kind of giggle at folks that are building 5-year strategies. Look, fidelity falls off, at least for me, after about 18 months. And so if you're not nimble enough to respond to that, I do think you're going to get left behind. I think the second piece that I continue to advocate for is the investment in team and the investment in partnership. The people that I see that are incredibly successful in this, they don't take credit, they take pride. And that is very much the philosophy that we have adopted here at MultiCare. I mean, I want to make my partners successful, and I want it to be technology enabled. And if we can do that at the right cost with the right quality, and everybody wins, including our patients. And so that's where we're going to continue to invest, not only for the next 18 months, but as long as I'm here at MultiCare.
I think that's a perfect spot to leave it, Brad. I appreciate you very much joining us today. You're welcome back anytime. And again, please, we'd love to hear the updates on some of these really cool initiatives that you guys are working on over there.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. It's good to be with you.
Absolutely. And thank you to our listeners. If you enjoyed the conversation, please like, share, and subscribe to help us keep growing the show. And if you'd like to learn a little more about Taylor Healthcare and the digital healthcare experience, you can go to taylor.com/digital-healthcare. That's it for today. And until next time, I'm Chris Civitarese, wishing you health and good cheer. Take care.
To learn more about Taylor Healthcare, please visit taylor.com/digital-healthcare. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice or services. The Digital Healthcare Experience is produced by Naomi Schwimmer. Podcast music by Nicholas Bach.